All right, so today we are diving into some pretty heavy stuff.
Yeah.
A political scandal that's like unfolding right before our eyes. And like you said, just weeks away from a major election.
Yeah.
We're digging into the allegations surrounding North Carolina Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson,
Right.
the Republican nominee for governor.
That's right.
And this is a big deal. This isn't just some local election.
Huge implications.
This is a governorship
Yeah.
with very real implications for the state and potentially for, like, national politics.
Absolutely. And that's what makes this recent scandal so significant. I mean,
Yeah.
CNN published this expose alleging that Robinson used a racial slur. And not just any slur. He allegedly referred to himself as a black Nazi on an online forum.
Oh.
And to make matters even more delicate, the forum in question is reportedly an adult site.
Okay, so definitely not the kind of headline you want attached to your campaign, especially with the election right around the corner.
Especially with early voting starting
Oh, gosh, yeah.
very soon.
And the timing of this. I mean, talk about bad timing.
Yeah, you couldn't draw it up any worse. I mean,
Yeah.
the CNN piece drops, and within days, his entire senior staff resigns.
Wow.
Campaign manager, finance director, you name it. I mean, these are key positions in any campaign,
Yeah.
let alone one for governor just weeks out from the election.
Yeah, so, I mean, even if we, like, entertain the possibility
Right.
that Robinson is being truthful in his denials,
Yeah.
that these posts are somehow fabricated or taken out of context or whatever, the optics of this situation are incredibly damaging.
Absolutely. This mass resignation, it signals chaos, instability, a lack of faith in leadership. And that lack of faith quickly extends beyond the campaign itself. Donors get nervous, volunteers reconsider their commitment, and the entire campaign can unravel practically overnight.
It makes you wonder, like, if this was all just a big misunderstanding, as Robinson claims, why wouldn't he be fighting tooth and nail to clear his name? Where's the counter evidence? Where's the outrage?
Right.
Instead, we get a statement about staff making the difficult choice to step away from the campaign. Difficult choice.
Yeah.
Sounds like damage control to me.
It certainly does raise questions. And, to your point, a strong rebuttal with tangible proof would carry a lot more weight than a simple denial.
For sure. Exactly. And so that begs the question, what does this lack of a concrete response say to voters?
Right.
Particularly those who might already be wary of his past controversial statements.
That's a great question, and that really gets to the heart of why this scandal is so impactful. We're talking about a candidate who already had a reputation for making inflammatory remarks.
Yeah.
And now this surfaces. It plays directly into existing doubts about his judgment and temperament, qualities voters look for in a leader.
Yeah, it's almost as if this scandal is confirming people's pre-existing fears and concerns, amplifying those existing doubts about his suitability for office.
Precisely. And that's what makes this deep dive so fascinating. It's not just about one politician's alleged past. It's about how the situation kind of intersects with these larger narratives, with voter trust, and with the kind of leadership people are seeking.
And speaking of larger narratives, it's not just the voters we have to think about here, right?
Right.
What about the people who threw their support behind Robinson? What are they doing?
Right. Like, where are the endorsements at in all this?
Exactly.
And that brings us to, I think, the curious case of Donald Trump.
Yeah.
The elephant not in the room, so to speak.
Okay, I like it.
Trump endorsed Robinson early on.
Yeah.
He even held a rally for him, I think, during the primaries, called him like one of the most powerful voices in the America First movement or something like that.
Yeah, you're right. And since this CNN report dropped, crickets. Nothing. Not a peep from the former president, even when he was just in North Carolina campaigning himself.
Right. And that silence speaks volumes. In politics, no comment is often a comment in itself.
For sure.
Trump's endorsement, it carries a lot of weight with his base. So you got to wonder, is this a sign that he's distancing himself?
Yeah.
Sensing maybe a sinking ship?
Especially since his own running mate, J.D. Vance, offered a less than enthusiastic response when reporters asked him about these allegations.
Right.
Something about letting things play out in the court of public opinion, I believe was the quote.
Yeah, very carefully worded statement that avoids directly addressing the issue. And again, that's telling in itself, I think. It suggests even those closest to Trump are kind of struggling to square his past support with, the current situation.
So say Trump were to withdraw his endorsement, or even just stay silent through this election. What kind of impact could that have?
I mean, potentially significant. For Robinson, losing the backing of such a prominent figure this close to the election could be incredibly damaging. It could further demoralize his base, make it harder to get funding. and even depress voter turnout among his supporters.
And it also kind of begs the question, are we seeing like a shift in how the GOP as a whole is handling these types of scandals?
That's a really interesting point. In the past, we've seen the party really rally around its candidates, even in the face of serious accusations. This time, though, it does feel different.
It does.
There seems to be a hesitancy, a recognition perhaps that blindly defending a candidate can backfire, especially in a tight race like this one.
And it's not even just about, political calculations and all that.
Sure.
This situation really highlights how much the landscape is changing in terms of what's considered disqualifying in politics.
Exactly. We live in an age where, like, every online utterance, every past misstep can be, unearthed and amplified. And this case, I think, raises these really important questions about, our digital footprints, the power of the internet, and whether we can ever truly escape our pasts, even if we claim to have, evolved or changed.
Not to mention the very real impact this election is going to have on the people of North Carolina, regardless of who wins.
Right. This is not just some abstract political drama. We're talking about education, healthcare, voting rights, the economy, issues that directly affect people's lives.
And let's not forget, North Carolina is often seen as like a bellwether state.
Totally.
A state that often predicts national trends. So the outcome of this election could have implications far beyond just North Carolina.
Absolutely. What happens in North Carolina rarely stays in North Carolina. And, the decisions voters make here could very well signal the direction of the political winds for the entire country.
Okay, so let's recap. We've got a scandal-plagued candidate fleeing staff radio silence from a major endorsement, and a whole lot at stake for North Carolina and maybe even the nation. So where do we even go from here?
Well, I think let's start with what we know. One Republican strategist was quoted in Axios saying Robinson's campaign was already over.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty bold statement,
Yeah.
but one that I think reflects the very, very uphill battle that he's now facing.
Already over. That's a pretty bleak outlook.
Yeah.
But you're right. This isn't like game over just yet. I mean,
Yeah.
Robinson still has like a very dedicated base of support. And he's been pushing back against these polls, saying that they underestimate Republican enthusiasm.
Yeah.
He even went as far as to say this whole thing is like a desperate attempt to derail his campaign.
Right, and that message might resonate with some voters,
Yeah.
particularly those who already kind of view Robinson as an outsider,
Right.
battling against the establishment.
Right.
They might see this as a politically motivated attack, which in their minds would further fuel their support.
So how do we even begin to weigh these different factors? Because on the one hand, you have these serious allegations in a campaign that just from the outside seems to be in free fall. But then on the other hand, you have a candidate who's like doubling down on his message and a base that might be more energized than ever. So like, what's a voter supposed to do with all that?
Right, that is the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think ultimately it comes down to what North Carolinians prioritize. Are they more concerned with these allegations and the potential instability they represent? Or are they willing to kind of overlook them and focus instead on Robinson's policies and his, appeal as this political outsider?
And this is where really understanding the full context of the North Carolina electorate is crucial.
Absolutely.
Because this isn't just one like big group of people. It's incredibly diverse with so many different viewpoints and priorities.
Right, and I think understanding those nuances, those different perspectives is really key to making sense of this race. I mean, we've talked about, the impact on Robinson's campaign, the potential fallout within the GOP, but like at the end of the day, it's the voters who are going to decide.
Exactly. So we've got a lot going on here. A scandal-plagued candidate fleeing staff radio silence from a major endorsement, and a whole lot at stake for North Carolina and possibly the entire nation.
Yeah.
As we wrap up, is there anything else we should be thinking about here?
Well, I think this deep dive has given us a lot to think about, regarding online legacies, political endorsements, and how the definition of what's considered disqualifying for leadership is changing in this digital age.
It really has. And, it seems like this whole situation is raising more questions than it answers.
Yeah.
Which is what makes it so fascinating. So as we head into these last few weeks before the election, I think it'll be really interesting to see how this story continues to unfold.
Absolutely.
Will Robinson be able to weather this storm?
Yeah.
Will Trump break his silence? And how will North Carolina voters respond? I guess we'll all just have to wait and see.
Exactly.
All right, well, that's it for this deep dive into the North Carolina governor's race. Thanks for listening.